I remember that Christmas night as clearly as if it happened yesterday. The scent of pine and cinnamon filled the air. Soft jazz played from the speakers, and the snow outside the tall windows looked almost too perfect, like a painting that didn't belong to the world I lived in. What are you doing while listening to this story? For me, I was standing in my parents' dining room that night, pretending everything was fine while my heart cracked in half. The Bennett's annual Christmas dinner was always an event, not a family gathering. It was a business show dressed up in holiday lights. My dad, Richard Bennett, the man who built a real estate empire from nothing, sat at the head of the table surrounded by 20 guests. Partner, investors, board members, neighbors who wanted to be seen with him. My mom, Margaret, floated around with her quiet smile, making sure everyone's wine glass stayed full. My brother Michael sat to Dad's right, laughing loudly about a new deal he closed. I was seated across from them, close enough to hear every word, yet far enough to be forgotten. I had dressed carefully for the night, in a dark green silk dress that cost more than I could afford, a gift I told myself I earned. I wanted to look like someone who belonged at that table. Dad lifted his glass and started his usual toast, thanking his team for another successful year, praising Michael for the expansion into Boulder, and nodding toward his business partner for sticking through the tough markets. Everyone clapped politely, the kind of clapping that fills space but means nothing. Not one person looked at me. When the laughter faded, one of the guests, a woman in pearls who owned a construction firm, turned to me with a polite smile. "And you, Claire, what are you up to these days?" Before I could open my mouth, Michael jumped in. "She teaches. Elementary school. Not much of a paycheck, but hey, someone's got to do charity work." Laughter. The kind that feels like cold water thrown in your face. I smiled. I had learned over the years that silence was safer than defending myself. Dad smirked, swirling the red wine in his glass. "Teaching. You've always liked small things, Claire. Small projects, small ambitions." The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. I looked at my plate. The cranberry sauce bled into the turkey, the color of embarrassment. For years, I had dreamed that someday Dad would notice me, that he'd say he was proud. That night, I finally understood that moment would never come. I reached for my water, trying to steady my breathing. But then he said it. "You've wasted every chance I gave you. I wish you were never born." It was almost quiet enough to hear the snow falling outside. Forks froze midair. Someone cleared their throat, but no one spoke. I felt my heart stumble, like it had forgotten how to beat. My mom's eyes darted to her plate. Michael grinned into his napkin, and the room waited for me to cry. But I didn't. I stood slowly, the chair scraping against the hardwood, the sound sharp as glass. Every pair of eyes turned to me. My voice came out calm. Too calm. "If that's your Christmas wish, Dad, then consider me as if I never existed." No one breathed. I reached into my purse and pulled out a white envelope. The gold seal caught the light from the chandelier as I slid it across the table toward him. He frowned, glancing at the others as if this were another negotiation. He tore it open. Inside was a thick wedding invitation printed on cream cardstock. At the top, in elegant script, it read, "Claire Bennett and David Walker." Underneath, the line that made my dad's face go pale. "The mayor of Denver and Ms. Claire Bennett invite you to celebrate their marriage on January 10th at City.C. Hall." The same mayor he had spent 6 months trying to meet. The same man whose approval his company desperately needed for a multi-million-dollar zoning project. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. I looked at his face, waiting for any sign of recognition or regret, but his jaw just clenched. He whispered, "You think this changes anything?" I smiled. "I think it already has." Then I picked up my coat, draped it over my shoulders, and walked toward the door. My mom whispered my name. I didn't turn around. The night air hit me like the truth. Cold, sharp, honest. Snowflakes landed on my lashes as I walked down the stone steps. Behind me, the laughter and music started again, forced and brittle, like nothing had happened. I reached my car, the same 10-year-old sedan I'd been driving since college. I sat inside for a moment, letting the heater struggle to warm the frozen air. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from release. For 31 years, I had been the quiet one, the agreeable daughter, the invisible one, the helper who wrote Dad's speeches for charity galas and got no credit. That night, I realized I didn't owe anyone my silence anymore. The roads were slick with snow, the city lights blurry through the windshield. I turned on the radio and an old song came on, one my mom used to hum when I was little. It was strange how calm I felt, like something inside me had stopped breaking and started rebuilding. As I waited at a red light, I looked at the envelope that once sat on that dinner table. The last one in my purse was still sealed, meant for my dad's business associate. I almost laughed. Let them all find out the same way. When I pulled into my apartment parking lot, the clock on the dashboard read 10:48. I sat there, watching the snow fall through the windshield until the glass frosted over. Maybe I should have cried. Maybe I should have felt angry. But all I felt was a strange, peaceful emptiness, like I had finally left a room I was never supposed to be in. Inside my apartment, the air smelled faintly of vanilla candles. I kicked off my heels and stood in front of the small Christmas tree I had, decorated myself with ornaments from my students. There was a handwritten card at the base that said, "Thank you for believing in us." My throat tightened. For the first time that night, tears came, but not from pain, from knowing that someone, somewhere, saw me. I thought of what my dad had said. "I wish you were never born." And I whispered to myself, "Then I'll live like I was born for me." I sat on the floor, the lights from the tree casting soft patterns on the wall. Outside, the world kept snowing, erasing footsteps, softening everything sharp. That night, I didn't just walk out of dinner. I walked out of the version of myself they built. I had no idea that by leaving that house, I was walking straight toward the moment that would make them face everything they had done. It would take only a few weeks, one gala, and one truth they could no longer ignore. But that comes later. For now, I remember the sound of the snow and the quiet that followed my own voice. And I remember thinking, for the first time in my life, that silence could be the loudest thing in the room. Silence could be the loudest thing in the room. And it followed me into the morning like a shadow I could finally live with. I woke before dawn, the apartment still and blue, the kind of quiet that makes the refrigerator hum sound almost like company. My eyes were puffy, not from crying, but from all the words I did not have to say anymore. I made coffee, the cheap kind that tastes like determination, and sat at the table with a notepad and a pen I had taken from school. I wrote 3 lines. Call the leasing office. Call human resources to confirm my time off request. Call David. By 7, I was on hold with the leasing office, tracing circles on the margin of the pad. When the woman finally answered, I asked about a unit that had more light. Maybe something on a higher floor. She told me 1 bedroom, 12th floor, southeast view, available in 2 weeks. The deposit was painful, but I could do it if I stopped trying to please people who never noticed. I said yes, and when I hung up, something small and tight loosened in my chest. I texted my principal next. I will take the professional development days we discussed. I want to finish the winter tutoring schedule from home. She replied fast. A simple line that I read twice. Proud of you. Take what you need. I put the phone down and let myself breathe. The kids would be fine. The volunteers were trained. The winter program I had built after school would run if I let good people step forward. I had not done much delegating in my life. Always afraid that if I stepped away, things would fall apart. That morning, I decided falling apart was not always a tragedy. Sometimes it is the way you learn what can stand on its own. Calling David felt harder. I stared at his name for a full minute. We had agreed to keep the wedding quiet because of the noise around his office, and because I wanted something that belonged only to us for a little while. The invitation had been meant to go out on Monday. One of them had found its way to my purse last week after I met the planner, downtown. Last night, when my dad made his wish, I realized Christmas was the kind of night when wishes deserved answers. I hit a call. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was still soft with sleep. I told him it was me. I told him I was safe. I told him I had walked out. Then I told him what my dad said. I kept my voice steady because if I let it shake now, I would never stop talking. There was a long pause, the kind where you can hear someone decide who they want to be. Then he said he was coming over. I said no, not yet. I needed an hour of my own thoughts before I saw his face. He respected that, like he always did, and said he would bring breakfast and wait in his car until I texted. I showered, scrubbed the scent of last night off my skin, and put on jeans and a sweater I had owned for years. Nothing fancy, just soft and clean. I wiped the fog from the mirror and looked at the girl who had stood up to a room full of money and cold smiles. She looked a little older than yesterday. She looked like someone I could learn to like. By 8:30, the knock came. Not on my door, but on my phone. I told him to come up. He walked in holding a paper bag and coffee and the kind of worry that has no place to sit. We ate on the floor near the little tree, balancing plates on our knees. He listened. No fast fixes, no instructions, just the slow nod of someone who is not scared of your pain. I told I did not want strings pulled or consequences delivered. I did not want to turn my life into a headline. He reached for my hand and said we would move the ceremony if I wanted, a small courthouse thing on a quiet weekday, or we could keep the date and let the world adjust to us. He said the choice was mine. I told him I wanted to keep January 10th. I did not say it out loud, but I needed something in my calendar that was about love and not survival. He smiled at that, a small, tired smile, and asked. We left the dishes in the sink and started with the closet. Packing was less about belongings and more about permissions. I kept the notebooks full of lesson plans I had written late at night. I kept the photographs my students drew of me with big round heads and stick arms. I kept the file box from under my bed that held the blueprint for the after-school program. I left the sweater my mom had bought 2 Christmases ago, still with a tag, like a polite apology. I left the bottle of red that my dad had given me at Thanksgiving, engraved with his company logo, unopened, and heavy with the kind of pride that has nothing to do with me. My phone buzzed while I was deciding whether to keep a pair of heels that hurt. It was my mom. She wrote, "Claire, please call me." I stared at the words. My thumbs hovered. Then I put the phone face down and kept folding sweaters. There would be time for words when actions had room to mean something. By noon, the living room was a field of labeled boxes. David carried the heavy ones to the car, and I taped the lighter ones with the kind of focus that keeps grief from taking up too much space. We dropped 3 bags at a donation center on Colfax, the volunteer thanking us with the kind of tired kindness that is worth more than most compliments. When we got back to the car, I turned on my phone for a moment and found 5 missed calls from a number that belonged to my dad's office, plus one from Michael. I let them sit there like unread mail I owed nothing to. I drove us to the new place to sign the paperwork. The leasing agent walked me through the details and I initiated more times, then seemed reasonable. When I slid the check across the counter, I felt the strange thrill of choosing my own life and paying for it with my own hand. The agent smiled and handed me keys in a little paper envelope. 12th floor southeast view, morning light. I thanked her and stepped into a different future that still smelled like fresh paint and possibility. We carried the first wave of boxes up and set them in the bedroom. The windows framed a stretch of sky that looked new, although I knew it was the same sky as last night. I stood there, watching a thin line of traffic crawl along in the distance, and I thought about how much of my life had been spent trying to be allowed into rooms that were never meant to hold me. This room needed no permission. It had nothing to prove. It just offered space. I turned toward David and told him I needed to stop by school alone. He looked startled for a second, then nodded. He kissed my forehead and said he would be at my old apartment when I was done. Picking up the last 2 boxes and throwing away anything that felt like weight. I smiled, grateful for the way he makes himself useful without making a speech about it. The halls at Jackson Elementary smelled like crayons and disinfectant, comfort and effort in equal parts. Winter break meant quiet stairwells and empty bulletin boards. I unlocked my classroom and stepped into the room that had saved me more times than I could count. The paper snowflakes the kids had cut before break still hung a little crooked. The whiteboard still said, "Good work on your science projects," with a star drawn after the word projects, where a student had taken my marker and decided praise needed extra punctuation. I stood there, hand on the doorknob, and let the silence fill me with something that felt like courage. I pulled out the tutoring plan and made a few notes for the volunteers. I stacked the robotics kits on the counter and labeled them by level. I texted 2 parents who had asked for extra help for their kids in January and told them to keep it next Wednesday. I sent a group message to the volunteers confirming schedules and reminding them that snacks live in the bottom drawer by the sink. Within minutes, my phone lit up with hearts and thumbs and "You got this" that made me laugh through my nose like a kid. On my way out, I ran into Ruth from the front office, a woman who has been running that building with a clipboard and a kind heart for 3 decades. She took one look at my face and asked if I was okay. I started to say I am fine, and then I did something better. I told her the truth. I told her Christmas dinner had gone wrong in a way I would not forget. She reached out and squeezed my arm and said that families can be loud even when they whisper. She told me she would keep an eye on my volunteers next week. She told me to go home and rest. I hugged her, and it felt like the first good decision I made all day. When I stepped back onto the sidewalk, the cold felt cleaner than the night before. The sky had cleared. The sun hit the snowbanks and made everything look forgiven, even the parts that were not yet. I walked to the corner and waited for the light to change, and that is when my phone rang again. Michael. I could have let it go to voicemail, but the part of me that prefers clean exits answered. He started fast. "Where are you? Mom is a wreck. Dad is furious. He says you embarrassed him. He says the invitation was a stunt. He says the mayor is not going to save you when this gets ugly." I let him run out of steam and then told him that the invitation was not a stunt and that nothing needed saving. I said I would not be attending any more dinners or writing any more speeches for the company charity events. He laughed. The old brother laughed like a cough. He said I was being dramatic. He said Dad did not mean it. I told him Dad meant every word, and that I believed him. There was a silence that felt like a door I had just closed. He told me I was making a mistake that would cost me. I told him I was finally learning what my life was worth. Then I said goodbye before he could use the word family like a leash. By late afternoon, the new bedroom had a mattress on the floor, a pile of books by the window, and not much else. David came back with takeout from a diner, the kind of meatloaf and mashed potatoes that taste like a promise. We ate off paper plates and watched the light crawl from gold to gray to blue. He asked if I wanted him at my next meeting with the foundation board for the after-school program. I told him yes. He asked if I wanted to tell the media anything about last night. I said no. If there was a lesson I wanted the world to learn, it would not be wrapped in my dad's name. Evening settled in. My phone buzzed across the floor. A text from an unknown number. The message was short. I was at dinner. What he said was wrong. I am sorry I stayed quiet. If you ever need help with construction resources for your program, call me. I recognized the first name and thought of the woman in pearls. I sent a polite thank you, then put the phone away. It is strange how quickly a life can tilt when one person tells the truth, even if that truth is ugly. Before he left for the night, David took my hand and asked me one last question. He asked if I wanted to postpone the January date, not because of pressure, but to give myself room. I looked at the empty room, at the sleeping city beyond the glass, at the small trees still lit in my old apartment in my mind. I told him no. I wanted to keep the promise I had made to myself before anyone else made me any promises. He smiled, kissed my cheek, and said he would be here at 9 a.m. with coffee and a toolbox. After the door closed, the apartment went very quiet. I brushed my teeth in a bathroom that did not yet have a shower curtain. I lay on the mattress and watched a line of headlights move along the distant highway like a slow river. I thought about the gala I had been invited to in early January, the one where the board would present community awards and show a short video about the winter program. I thought about how my dad's company had sponsored that event in past years, and how I had helped draft the remarks that made him sound generous. My name had never been on those scripts. This year I had been asked to speak for 3 minutes, not as a daughter, but as a teacher. I closed my eyes and pictured the stage lights, the microphone, the faces I would not need to look at. I pictured a room where I would tell the truth without naming the people who had tried to erase me. Somewhere in that same city, my dad was making calls, shaping his side of the story. Somewhere in that same city, my mom was probably standing at the sink, staring out a window, wishing the clock would turn backward. Somewhere in that same city, a kid was falling asleep with a book about planets under her pillow, not knowing that the world had already decided something about her, and that my job was to teach her how to decide something else. The radiator kicked on with a soft clatter, and the room warmed slowly. My body finally felt heavy in a good way. There would be more phone calls. There would be invitations I would not accept, and apologies I would not trust. Without proof, there would be a ceremony on a cold January morning where I would speak my vows and mean every word. Before all of that, there would be a stage and a story, and a moment I had not fully imagined yet, a moment when the people who laughed at me would have to stop and listen. I turned on my side and tucked my hands under my cheek, and in the quiet, I heard the city breathing along with me, steady and unchanged, as if to say that the world will go on while you learn how to begin. The world will go on while you learn how to begin. I woke up the next morning to the sound of soft rain tapping against the window. The city looked washed clean. The snow melted down to slush, and the air smelled like wet pavement and something new. For the first time in years, I didn't have to rush anywhere. My classroom was covered. My phone had stopped buzzing overnight, and I had no reason to walk into a house that would never feel like home again. I made coffee and stood by the window, watching cars crawl through the early traffic on Colfax. Across the street, a woman in a yellow coat was walking her dog. She smiled at a stranger passing by. That small, ordinary kindness made me ache a little. I checked my email. There was a message from the Bright Steps board reminding me of the gala. Preparation meeting next week. It was a quick reminder, just logistics and schedules. But reading it made my stomach twist. I had written those emails in past years, back when my dad's company was the event's top sponsor. I had been the one quietly putting together his speech while he stood under the spotlight, shaking hands and collecting praise. This year the roles had changed, and none of them knew it yet. The sound of keys at the door pulled me out of my thoughts. David stepped in, his hair damp from the rain, holding 2 cups of coffee and a paper bag. He smiled when he saw me. I told him he didn't have to bring breakfast every morning. He said he knew, but he liked being part of this new quiet I had built. We ate on the windowsill, watching the street below. He asked if I had heard from my mom. I shook my head. Only silence. It was her way of managing conflict. Disappear until it all blew over. Then he said something that made me stop chewing. His office had received a formal request from Bennett Holding, my dad's company, to schedule a meeting about a new zoning proposal. The letter had arrived 2 days before Christmas. I set my coffee down. Of course, that was the real reason he wanted me at dinner. It wasn't about reconciliation. It was a strategy. My stomach turned as I pictured his calm smile, the way he poured wine for his partners while deciding how to use his daughter's connection to the mayor. David looked at me carefully. He said he wouldn't take the meeting unless I was comfortable with it. I told him not to cancel. Let them talk to the mayor's office, not to me. He nodded. I could see he wanted to say more, but he knew me well enough to wait. By noon, I decided to visit my mom. David offered to drive, but I wanted to go alone. She still lived in the same red brick house where I had grown up, a place that used to smell like cinnamon and Sunday dinners, but now just smelled like polish and silence. When she opened the door, she looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair had gone gray around the edges. Her sweater hung loose on her shoulders. She stepped aside to let me in, but didn't hug me. The house looked untouched. The same beige carpet, the same photographs on the wall, the same vase of artificial poinsettias on the table. It felt like walking into a museum of a life that no longer fit. We sat across from each other in the living room, the ticking clock between us louder than our breathing. I asked how she was. She said, fine. Then she asked if I had eaten. I said yes. That was the rhythm of our relationship. Small talk layered over wounds we both pretended not to see. Finally, she said she wanted to apologize for what happened at dinner. I asked her which part she was sorry for. She hesitated. For the words your father said, she whispered. And for not stopping him. I nodded, staring at the reflection of the Christmas tree lights on the window. She asked if I was really marrying the mayor. I told her yes, and that she would have known earlier if anyone in that house had cared to ask me about my life. Her hands trembled around the edge of her teacup. "Your dad isn't an easy man," she said. "He's proud. He's old-fashioned. But he does love you in his own way." I looked at her. "Love that breaks you isn't love. It's control." She blinked hard, but didn't argue. Then she said something that made my throat tighten. "He's afraid you don't need him anymore." I wanted to say that I never really did, but I didn't. I stood up, kissed her cheek, and said I'd see her at the wedding if she decided to come. She nodded without meeting my eyes. Driving back through downtown, I passed the Civic Hall, where the gala would be held. Workers were putting up banners along the front steps, white and gold with the Bright Steps logo. Seeing it there, so public and proud, filled me with something close to disbelief. A year ago, Bright Steps had barely survived. We were running out of funding and supplies. The kids' laptops were breaking faster than we could fix them. I spent my nights writing proposals and sending emails to local businesses, asking for help. Most never replied. But one afternoon, I received a call from Morrison Foundation, one of the city's major community investors. They said someone from the mayor's office had recommended our program. That someone was David. He hadn't told me. I only learned about it later, after the grant was approved. When I asked why he didn't mention it, he said he wanted me to believe I'd earned it myself. It was that kind of kindness that scared me at first. I wasn't used to love that didn't come with strings. As I drove past the Civic Hall, I thought about how far the program had come. 50 kids in the pilot year, then 80 the next. Now over 200 students across 3 schools. And this gala, my gala, would raise enough money to expand again. For once, the work I did in the shadows would stand in the light. That night, I stayed up late reviewing the speech the board had drafted for me. It was full of polite phrases and thank yous, written in a tone that didn't sound like me. I crossed out half of it and started rewriting by hand. The words needed to come from someone who had lived what she was saying. Halfway through, I paused. There was a knock at my door. It was David, holding 2 steaming cups of cocoa and a folded piece of paper. He said his communications director had forwarded something I should see. It was a public press release from Bennett Holdings announcing their continued sponsorship of the Bright Steps Gala. I read the statement twice. My dad's signature was at the bottom. It mentioned the company's proud tradition of supporting community education and thanked the dedicated educators who make a difference. My name wasn't in it, but I could see the spin clearly. He was trying to attach his brand to mine, pretending to be the benevolent supporter, instead of the man who had humiliated me in front of 30 people. David asked what I wanted to do. I told him nothing. The truth would reveal itself soon enough. Let him think he's still in control. Sometimes silence is the best kind of mirror. He smiled, that soft kind of smile that carries both worry and admiration, and told me he trusted my judgment. When he left, I sat by the window again, watching the city lights flicker across the wet streets. The next morning, I received another call, this time from Michael. He didn't apologize. Instead, he sounded cheerful in that artificial way people use when they want to manipulate you without sounding obvious. He said Dad wanted to have lunch to clear the air. He said it wasn't about business, just family. I almost laughed. Family had become a word they used like bait. I told him I'd think about it. He said the restaurant was already booked for Thursday, 1 o'clock, and hung up before I could say no. I didn't plan on going. But curiosity is a strange thing. By Thursday morning, I found myself dressing in a navy coat and boots, telling myself I only wanted to see what game they were playing. The restaurant was one of those quiet, expensive places with glass walls and too much silverware on the table. I spotted them before they saw me. My dad sitting upright in his tailored suit, Michael scrolling through his phone, pretending to look busy. When I walked in, they both stood up. My dad gestured for me to sit. He ordered wine without asking what I wanted. For 10, my mom's garden. Then he shifted the conversation, smooth as ever. He said he had read about the gala and was proud that I had found something meaningful to do. He said he had always believed in giving back to the community, and that perhaps we could align our efforts again. I stared at him, waiting for the real reason. It came quickly. His company needed the mayor's office to approve a zoning request for a new development near the river. He thought a united front at the gala would send a good message to the city. I asked him if that was why he wished I was never born, because I wasn't useful to him anymore. His jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Michael shifted uncomfortably. I told them both I had to go. My dad reached for my arm, lowering his voice. "Don't embarrass us again, Claire." I pulled my hand back and said that this time, it wouldn't be me who did the embarrassing. Then I walked out before the waiter brought the food. Outside, the sky was clear again, sharp and blue. I walked fast, my heels clicking against the sidewalk, my pulse steady. When I reached my car, my phone buzzed with a message from the gala committee confirming my final speech rehearsal. For the first time in my life, I felt ready to stand in a room full of people who had doubted me and let them hear my voice. What I didn't know yet was that my dad planned to attend the gala himself, not to support me, but to make sure his version of the story stayed intact. I started the engine, unaware that the night of the gala would not only reveal the truth, but strip every mask he had ever worn. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, unable to shake that thought. Denver looked gray and quiet, as if the city itself were holding its breath. I made coffee, packed my notes, and told myself this was just another event, just another speech. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. When I arrived at Civic Hall, workers were already setting tables and testing lights. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish and nerves. James from the council waved at me from the stage, clipboard in hand. "You're second on the program," he said. "We'll start with the youth video, then you." I nodded. My voice was steady, but my hands weren't. He handed me a headset mic, and I walked onto the empty stage. The spotlight hit my face. The room echoed when I spoke my first line. Clear. Measured. Mine. James gave a thumbs up from the back. "Perfect," he said. In the green room, I sat alone for a few minutes, flipping through my notes. Between the pages was the ivory envelope with my dad's name on it. Inside were 2 documents. The first, a letter formally removing Bennett Holdings from the gala's major sponsors. The second, an old contract showing his company had promised to fund a youth center, and never did. I just wanted him to see it, to know I carried proof. A volunteer, barely out of college, brought me water. Her brother was one of my Bright Step students. She told me he'd built a small robot from scrap parts and now wanted to be an engineer. She said he'd never believed in himself before the program. Her voice. I smiled and told her that meant more to me than any award. When I left rehearsal, the parking lot was slick with melting snow. David was waiting by the car, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired from another long meeting. "You're ready," he said. I told him I wasn't sure ready was the right word. "Then call it steady," he said. "Steady is enough." We ate takeout that night at the apartment. Chicken soup and bread that tasted calm. I showed him the envelope. He studied it for a moment, then asked quietly, "What do you want from tomorrow?" "Not revenge," I said. "Just the truth." He nodded. "Then let the room tell it for you." The next morning, snow drifted past the window like ash. I met Leela, the board chair, for coffee. She told me Bennett Holdings had confirmed a full table at the front. "Don't let it throw you," she said. "Your work speaks louder." She slid an updated seating chart across the table. I placed my mom near the aisle, David 2 tables behind her. I didn't assign my dad a seat. He'd find one. He always did. At noon, my brother called. "Dad wants your speech in advance. PR needs to align messaging." I laughed softly. "You mean he wants to control it?" He hesitated. "He just doesn't want surprises." "Then maybe he shouldn't keep creating them," I said, and hung up. Later that afternoon, I stopped by Bright Steps. The kids were setting up a small model of the city they'd built. Cardboard. Buildings wired with tiny bulbs that lit up when you pressed street names. One boy, Gabe, showed me how 2 circuits connected to make a bridge glow. "It's for kids to cross the river to school," he said. I told him that was exactly how change starts, with someone imagining a better bridge. As I turned to leave, I saw my mom waiting outside, bundled in a pale blue coat. Her face looked softer than it had in weeks. "I came to see the program," she said. We stood on the sidewalk, watching snow melt into the curb. She hesitated, then told me my dad planned to speak after me at the gala. He'd already asked the committee for a microphone. "He wants to make it look like we are united," she whispered. "I'm sorry." I steadied myself against the car door. "Thank you for telling me," I said. She nodded, eyes full of guilt. "I should have done more," she said. "You just did," I answered. When I got home, I called Lila. She wasn't surprised. "Then we'll fix it," she said. "No unapproved speeches. It's policy, not personal. She sent a memo to staff minutes later. Neutral, professional, and absolute. I exhaled for the first time that day. By 5:30, I was back at the apartment getting dressed. My hands were steady as I fastened my grandmother's gold necklace, the only piece of jewelry that ever felt like courage. David adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror, then turned to me. "Ready?" he asked. "Steady," I said again. The drive downtown felt both endless and too short. The city glowed under strings of white lights, cars sliding through the slush like slow silver fish. When our car pulled up to Civic Hall, I saw the building bathed in amber light, banners fluttering with the Bright Steps logo. People in evening coats and sequins moved up the steps, laughing in soft practice tones. Inside, the ballroom shimmered with candles and gold accents. I spotted Lila near the podium, headset in place, giving quiet directions to staff. She saw me and smiled. "You're up soon," she said. "The kids' video rolls right before you walk out." Across the room, near the sponsor wall, my dad stood in his usual posture. Straight back, shoulders squared, confidence, rehearsed. Michael stood beside him, pretending to check his phone. My dad shook hands with 2 city officials, then turned. His eyes met mine. For half a second, his expression faltered. Then the mask returned. I felt my heartbeat climb but kept my face still. The difference between fear and readiness is sometimes only one breath. I took mine. Lila touched my arm. "He's front row center," she whispered. "Ignore him. This is your night." "I will," I said, and meant it. The backstage was warm and humming with low voices. I watched from behind the curtain as the lights dimmed. The room quieted. Forks stilled. Conversations died mid-sentence. The opening video began. Our students working on projects, laughing, presenting their small, glowing city. Their voices filled the speakers. "Miss Townsend always tells us we can do anything," one girl said. The sound hit me like a wave. Out in the audience, I could see my dad lean slightly forward, curiosity replacing confidence. He didn't know what was coming. Not yet. The screen faded to black, and white text appeared across it. Founder and Executive Director, Claire Townsend. My name, my work, my truth. There was a brief pause, just long enough to feel the air change. The MC's voice came through the speakers. "Please welcome to the stage, Miss Claire Townsend. The spotlight found me in the wings." I adjusted the microphone clip to my jacket, smoothed the edges of my notes, and felt the weight of the envelope still inside my clutch. Behind the curtain, someone whispered, "You're on." I stepped forward. The lights were blinding, but I could still see him. Front row, glass of champagne half raised, the faintest trace of confusion frozen on his face. The applause swelled around me, rising and falling like a tide I had finally learned to ride. I took a single breath, steady and clear, and stepped fully into the light. The applause thundered as I stepped into the light. I began with the truth. I told them about 12 kids in a borrowed classroom, folding tables, and a single broken laptop that overheated every hour. I told them talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. I didn't read from my notes. I spoke from memory, from every sleepless night I'd spent believing it would never matter. When I shared our results, 127 students, 9% improvement in science and math, the audience leaned forward. Even from the stage, I could feel the shift. The moment they realized this wasn't charity, it changed. I saw faces soften, hands reach for applause. But I saved that energy for the end, because the truth wasn't just numbers. It was survival. I spoke about a little girl named Maya who wanted to be an engineer before she'd ever met one, about a boy who built a bridge of wires so kids could cross the river to school. The audience laughed softly. I smiled with them, but my eyes never left the front row. My dad sat stiff, unmoving. His champagne glass hovered midair. My brother stared at his phone. My mom's hands were clasped tight on her lap. I ended with the line I'd rewritten the night before. "You don't need permission to make a difference. You don't need approval to know your worth. You just show up, do the work, and let the impact speak for itself." The applause hit like a wave. I stood for 3 seconds, then bowed my head and stepped away. Backstage, the coordinator whispered, "That was perfect." I smiled, though my pulse was racing. Through the curtain, I could feel the room changing direction. Toward me, toward the truth. Then I saw him coming. My dad, slicing through the crowd, his smile stretched too wide. I froze. He held his hand out as if to congratulate me, but I could see the irritation behind his eyes. "Let's talk," he said quietly, that clipped tone I knew too well. "Now." "No," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I'm in the middle of something." He leaned closer. "This isn't about you, Claire. It's about image. You embarrassed this family once. Don't do it again." I reached into my clutch and pulled out the ivory envelope. "You might want to read this before you talk about family." He frowned, but took it. I didn't move as he opened it. His eyes darted down the page, the document showing he'd pledged to fund a youth center that never got built, and my signed letter removing Bennett Holdings from our sponsorship list. His jaw tightened. "What are you trying to prove?" "Nothing," I said. "Just giving back what was never mine to carry. You'll regret this, maybe, but at least I'll regret something honest." I stepped back before he could respond. The coordinator caught my eye from the wings, ready to cue the next speaker. I turned away, leaving him holding the envelope like it weighed 100 pounds. I found my mom near the side door, half hidden by a column. She looked pale. "I saw," she whispered. "He's furious. He'll survive." Her lips trembled. "You were magnificent. I didn't know how much you'd built." "You never asked," I said softly. She nodded. "I'm sorry." "Then start by showing up for the kids," I told her. "They could use a Thursday volunteer." Tears filled her eyes. She nodded again, this time without words. When I returned to the ballroom, people were waiting. Sponsors, reporters, community leaders. The energy had shifted. My father's name no longer filled the air. Mine did. A local news anchor shook my hand. "That was powerful," she said. "Can we feature your program next week?" A construction company owner, one of my dad's old allies, approached quietly. "You're doing good work, Claire," he said. "If you ever need materials, call me." I thanked him. His eyes flicked toward my dad, who stood across the room, pretending to check his phone while people whispered near him. He looked smaller somehow. His confidence cracked just enough for light to leak through. David appeared beside me, calm as always. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm better than okay," I said. "I'm free." He smiled, kissed my forehead, and slipped back into the crowd. By the time the last award ended, the noise in the room was a steady hum of conversation. I watched my dad try to leave, but people kept stopping him. Someone pointed at me, another at the envelope now peeking from his jacket pocket. His smile strained, his composure slipping by degrees. He finally reached the exit. For a brief second, our eyes met. I didn't look away, neither did he, until someone asked him a question about integrity. Then he turned, sharp and cold, and walked into the night. I stepped outside a few minutes later. The cold air bit my skin, but it felt good. Clean. Earned. The snow had stopped, and the city lights stretched across the frozen streets like constellations. My brother followed me out. "You made your point," he said quietly. "Dad's going to take this hard. Then maybe he'll finally feel something real." He looked down at his shoes. "You didn't have to humiliate him." "I didn't," I said. "He did that himself." He hesitated. "He's still our dad." "He's your dad," I corrected gently. "Mine died the moment he told me I should never have been born." Michael looked at me for a long second. For once there was no sarcasm, no smugness. Just shame. "You were right," he said finally. "I laughed that night. I shouldn't have." "Then stop laughing at the wrong people." He nodded, but I didn't wait for more. When I turned back toward the hall, I saw my mom standing near the entrance, her coat half-buttoned, watching us both. She looked like she wanted to say something, but I shook my head. Not tonight. She understood. David was waiting by the car. I climbed in, leaned my head against the cold window, and watched the lights of the Civic Hall fade behind us. The envelope was gone from my clutch, and with it, a weight I'd carried my whole life. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was peaceful. At a red light, David reached over and squeezed my hand. "You did it," he said quietly. I looked at the city ahead, at the streets that had once felt too big for me. "No," I said. "I just stopped letting them decide who I am." He smiled, eyes on the road. That's better. As we turned onto Colfax, snow began to fall again, soft and slow, blurring the world into something almost gentle. I watched it drift past the windshield and thought of the children who would see their projects tomorrow. Bridges of wire, lights that glow when you press a name. My dad might still hold his glass and pretend none of this happened, but the truth was already out. The story was mine now, and for the first time, that felt like enough. The next morning, sunlight crept through the curtains, but the room still smelled like last night's tension. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling both light and hollow. The gala was over, yet something in me couldn't rest. My phone buzzed again and again on the nightstand. I didn't have to look to know who it was. My dad never liked being cornered. I finally rolled over and checked the screen. 8 missed calls, 3 texts. The last one was short. We need to talk. Family meeting. Noon. I stared at it for a full minute before tossing the phone aside. A part of me wanted to ignore him completely, but silence now would look like fear. And I wasn't afraid anymore. David walked out of the kitchen holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You've been up for hours," he said softly. "Let me guess, your dad?" I nodded. "He wants a family meeting. Noon." He set the mugs down. "Do you want me to come?" "No," I said. "This one's mine." The drive to my parents' house felt heavier than the air itself. The streets were still lined with melting snow, the kind that turns to gray slush and splashes up against your car no matter how slow you go. When I pulled into their driveway, both cars were already there. My mom's pale sedan, my brother's silver SUV, and in the front window, I could see the curtains move. Inside, the house was too warm, the kind of heat that makes you dizzy. My mom stood near the fireplace, her hands twisting a dish towel even though there were no dishes in sight. My brother leaned against the counter, his jaw tight. My dad sat in his armchair, posture straight, his face unreadable. "Sit down," he said. I stayed standing. "Say what you need to say." He took a slow breath, folding his hands. "Last night was unacceptable. You humiliated me. You humiliated this family. Reporters called this morning asking why I was removed as a sponsor. Do you have any idea how that looks?" "It looks honest," I said. "Which is more than I can say for that fake partnership you tried to parade. He ignored the jab. "You made us look divided. And you dragged company business into the public eye." "I didn't drag anything. You brought it into my life first. You tried to use me for that zoning deal, and when I said no, you made sure everyone at Christmas knew what you thought of me." He flinched slightly, but recovered fast. I was angry. "You provoked me." "I provoked you by existing?" His jaw clenched. "Watch your tone." "No," I said firmly. "I've spent 32 years watching it. You called me a failure. You told me I shouldn't have been born. You wanted the public face of family, not the truth that comes with it." Michael stepped in. "All right, let's all calm down." I turned to him. "You were there, Michael. You laughed." He looked away, ashamed. "I know, I shouldn't have." "Then stop covering for him." My dad slammed his hand on the armrest. "Enough. You think you can stand there and lecture me about right and wrong? You built that little program on my name, on my connections, and now you're going to bite the hand that fed you?" The room went still. My mom whispered, "Please, both of you." I looked him straight in the eyes. "You didn't feed me. You ignored me. Every door I walked through, I opened myself. You just didn't notice because I stopped begging you to watch." For a moment, he said nothing. The only sound was the clock ticking. Then he rose from the chair, moving closer until we were just a few feet apart. His voice dropped low. "You think one speech makes you powerful? You'll find out soon enough what it costs to turn your back on your family." I met his stare. "If family means silence, I'll pay the price." He smirked slightly, that familiar look of quiet contempt. "We'll see if your donors still support you once they realize who you really are." "You mean once they realize who you are?" The words hit him harder than I expected. His shoulders stiffened. Then he did something I hadn't seen in years. He hesitated, just for a heartbeat. That flicker of doubt was all I needed. I turned toward the door, but before I left, I looked back at my mom. You don't have to stay quiet anymore either. She didn't answer. Her eyes followed me to the door, but she didn't move. Outside, the air was biting cold. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keys. I wasn't sure if it was anger or adrenaline, maybe both. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw my mom step onto the porch. She didn't wave, but she didn't go back inside either. Halfway home, my phone rang. It was Lila from the Bright Steps board. "Claire," she said, voice tight. "Something's going on. We got an email this morning from Bennett Holdings' legal department. They're demanding clarification about your comments at the gala." I felt my chest tighten. "What kind of clarification?" "They claim you made false statements about a prior contract. They're hinting at a defamation claim." I pulled into a parking lot and put the car in park. "They won't risk it," I said slowly. "That contract exists. I have the original copy with his signature." Lila exhaled. "Good. Then we'll stand firm. But I wanted you to know what's coming." When I hung up, I sat there in silence, watching people walk past the window of a nearby diner, laughing, oblivious. I took a deep breath and called David. He answered on the first ring. "I heard," he said before I could speak. "They're trying to scare you. They're making it official." "Let them," he said calmly. "If they want a fight, they'll get one, and it won't go their way." That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind outside howled through the gaps in the old windows, and every sound made my nerves twitch. I got up, went to my desk, and pulled the contract from the folder where I'd kept it since the night of the gala. The paper was slightly wrinkled, the signature unmistakable. Proof, plain as daylight. I poured myself a glass of water, but it sat untouched. My mind wouldn't stop racing. He was going to war now, not with fists or shouting, but with the weapon he knew best. Power. Just past midnight, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't my dad. It was a number I didn't recognize. The message was short. "You don't know me, but you need to see something. Check your email. Confidential." For a moment, I thought it was spam, but curiosity won. I opened my laptop and refreshed my inbox. There was a single new message. No subject line, no name. Just a link and 5 words. "He's not who you think." I clicked before I could second-guess it. A document loaded, a series of scanned invoices, payment logs, and a letterhead from Bennett Holdings. My eyes widened as I scrolled. It wasn't about Bright Steps. It was about city contracts, land deals, bribes. The dates went back 5 years. The final page stopped my breath. It was a wire transfer to a private account in Michael's name. The timestamp? 2 days before Christmas. I sat, frozen, the screen's blue light burning my eyes. My dad had always used people like pawns, but now I finally saw who else was on the board. Outside, the city was asleep, unaware of what was about to wake up. And for the first time, I realized the gala wasn't the ending. It was the spark. The documents burned in my mind all night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the wire transfer. Money from Bennett Holdings to a private account in Michael's name. 2 days before Christmas. The date alone felt like a slap. He'd been part of it. The same brother who mocked me for being naive had taken a payoff from our father's company. By morning, my decision was made. No hesitation. I printed every page, sealed them in a folder, and drove through the gray light of Denver's winter toward a coffee shop where Lila was waiting. The cold bit through my coat as I handed her the folder. She opened it slowly, and when her eyes scanned the second page, her face went pale. "This is bad," she whispered. "Really bad." "It's fraud," I said, "and it touches city contracts." She shut the folder. "Where did you get this?" "Anonymous tip. Someone inside Bennett." Her hands trembled. "Then we go legal, right now." Within 2 hours, we sat in a quiet conference room at Bright Steps headquarters with Nora, our attorney. She studied every line, no expression on her face, just the steady rhythm of a professional who'd seen worse. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but deliberate. "If these documents are authentic, this isn't just a company problem. It's public funds misuse, potentially bribery. You need to protect yourself immediately. No talking to your father. No one outside this room. Her words were both terrifying and strangely liberating. For once, I didn't feel like the weak link in the family chain. I nodded. Understood. That afternoon, Nora filed a preservation demand and notified the city attorney's office. I expected backlash, and it didn't take long. By 3 o'clock, a local journalist called, asking if Bright Steps was cutting ties with Bennett due to ethical conflicts. My stomach turned. My dad had already started spinning his story. Bright Steps has no comment, I said, and hung up. Calm. Controlled. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. By sunset, I was standing on my mom's porch, trying to breathe in the cold air before knocking. She opened the door, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "Your father's furious," she said quietly. "He says you're trying to destroy him." I stepped inside. He destroyed himself. I just stopped cleaning up after him. We stood in the kitchen, the same one where she'd taught me to bake cookies and stay quiet. The silence pressed down between us until I said, "You don't owe him your silence anymore." She hesitated, glancing toward the hallway. "He's still your dad." "No," I said softly. "He's just a man who's run out of people to manipulate." Her eyes filled. "What can I do?" "Keep your phone. Record everything. If he tells you to delete something, call me." She nodded, and for the first time in years, I saw something like courage flicker behind her fear. When I got home, the parking garage was dim, my footsteps echoing. A man stepped out from behind a column, hands raised. "I'm the one who sent the files," he said. His voice was rough, scared. "You don't know me." Every instinct told me to run, but I saw something desperate in his eyes. "Who are you?" "Just call me Evan. I work in procurement at one of Bennett's partners." His breath came out fast. "They're laundering money through dummy consulting fees. Your brother's payment was labeled community outreach. It's all fake." I studied with him. "Why tell me?" He looked at the floor. "Because you're the only one who said no to them." I led him inside, made tea, and listened as he laid out everything. Names, dates, inflated invoices, and whispers of people who knew too much. His voice shook when he said he had kids. He slid a small drive across my table, everything I could pull without being noticed. Before I could thank him, I called Nora. She arrived within the hour, calm and efficient. She asked Evan questions, noting every answer, promising confidentiality under whistleblower protection. When he left, he looked lighter, but his hands still trembled as he zipped his coat. I closed the door, leaning against it until my knees stopped shaking. David arrived later with food I couldn't eat. He listened as I told him everything. "You're doing the right thing," he said quietly. "It's just going to hurt first." It did. At dawn, 2 men in dark coats knocked on my door. "We're from Bennett's legal team," one said. "Mr. Bennett wants to recover company property." "You mean stolen evidence," I said flatly. They exchanged a glance. "We can avoid escalation if you hand over the documents." "I don't have them," I said. "And Bright Steps Council has already filed federal preservation orders. If you try to intimidate me, I'll add witness tampering." Their expressions froze. The taller one muttered that I was making a mistake. I said, "So did he," and closed the door. By noon, my phone was exploding. Local media ran a short piece about Bright Steps cutting ties with a longtime sponsor amid ethical concerns. My father's empire suddenly didn't look so invincible. Board members were panicking, partners calling for distance. I watched it unfold from my couch, a coffee cup growing cold in my hand. Then my phone buzzed again. Michael. I almost didn't answer. On the 3rd call, I did. "You think you're some kind of hero?" His voice was sharp. "You're dragging us all through the mud." "I didn't take a dime, Michael. You don't understand how business works." "Kickbacks aren't business," I said evenly. "They're crimes." He fell silent for a beat, then snapped, "Mom's falling apart. She can't sleep. Come home. End this before it gets worse." I could picture him in Dad's office, standing under those framed awards, using the same manipulative calm Dad always used when he wanted obedience. "Meet me somewhere public," I said. "We'll talk." He agreed too easily. We met that afternoon at a downtown cafe filled with people and cameras. I sat near the window. When Michael arrived, he looked tired but still smug. "You're about to ruin everything Dad built. He built it on lies, I said. He leaned closer. You don't get it. You think exposing this will fix something? You'll sink the company, hundreds of jobs, everything. Do you want that on your conscience? I didn't blink. He made that choice, not me. He sighed, voice dropping. Then tell me what it takes to make this go away. I froze. You're trying to bribe me. I'm trying to end this, he said. You want an apology? Fine. You want money? You've got it. I laughed, a small, humorless sound. You still think this is about money? He stared, realizing he'd miscalculated. You're asking for something I can't give. I'm asking for the truth, I said, in public, from both of you. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. You have no idea what you're stepping into. There's more going on here than you know. Then tell me. He hesitated. The city inspector who approved our Highland permits, he's about to be promoted to a new commission. The vote's tomorrow. If this hits after the vote, they'll bury it as politics. If it hits before, Dad loses everything. Then maybe it's time he did, I said quietly. He looked around, lowering his voice. You didn't hear this from me. But there's someone inside City Hall who knows. She's ready to talk if you show proof. My name's Marissa, works zoning compliance. She's scared, but she's watching. He slid a card across the table, the edges damp from his palm. Then he stood, avoiding my eyes. If you go public before the vote, they'll come for you, Claire. Hard. Just remember, once it starts, you can't stop it. He left, leaving the faint smell of cologne and guilt behind. I sat there, staring at the card. The cafe noise faded until it felt like I was underwater. My heart thudded like it was counting down. I reached for my phone and dialed the number. It rang twice. Then a cautious voice answered. Hello? Marissa, my name's Claire Bennett. We need to talk. There was a long pause. Then a whisper. I've been waiting for your call. The line went quiet except for the sound of her breathing. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and slow, blanketing the city in white, as if it could hide what was about to come. I've been waiting for your call, Marissa said, her voice steady but nervous. We met the next morning in a quiet corner of the Denver Public Library, the kind of public place that still feels private. She looked younger than I expected, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. She told me the inspector's promotion vote was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. The same inspector who had pushed through my father's Highland permits. She showed me copies of routing sheets, initials that matched a deputy in zoning. She said there were private server emails, dinners logged as personal. If you file before the vote, it stops everything. If you wait, it disappears, she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I told her I had proof, and a lawyer. She nodded, slid me a folder with a printout, an email chain confirming a dinner between the inspector and one of Bennett's partners 2 nights after a permit approval. She said, "Now you have enough." Then she walked away like she'd been waiting months to hand off the truth. I called Nora the moment I reached my car. She told me to come to her office. By noon, I was there with Lila. We spread the evidence across a long oak table. Nora read everything in silence, then looked up. We'll file for a temporary injunction to stop the vote. You'll need a sworn statement from Marissa and audio or written confirmation that Bennett pressured city officials. I nodded. We have both. Marissa signed the affidavit by 4 o'clock. I sent Nora the file my mom had emailed that morning. A recording, she said, she'd captured accidentally while bringing my dad coffee. I pressed play, and his voice filled the room. Reclassify the consultant as community outreach, he said. If she talks, call her unstable. Make sure she's isolated. Lila's hand went to her mouth. Nora's eyes didn't move from the laptop. That's enough, she said softly. We file first thing in the morning. The drive home felt shorter than it should have. My phone buzzed with blocked numbers, then went quiet. The silence was worse. Mom called as I was locking my door. He knows, she whispered. He told Michael to pull donations from the literacy fund. He said, if people want to side with you, they'll pay for it. Keep recording, I said. Save everything. She exhaled shakily. I will. Around 7, I noticed the black SUV parked across from my building. It didn't move. When David showed up with dinner, I pointed it out. He didn't even look surprised. "You're coming with me," he said. We packed essentials and the documents. As we pulled out, the SUV followed. Halfway down the block, it crept up beside us. The window lowered. A man inside smiled. "Ms. Bennett, we just want to talk." David's jaw tightened. "Then talk to her attorney." He hit the gas. The SUV didn't follow. At his apartment, we spread everything across the kitchen table. Files, affidavits, the audio, Marissa's statement. David brewed coffee and said, "If they're watching, let them see two people working." By 10, Nora sent the filing schedule. 7 a.m. to the city clerk, simultaneous release to the press. She wrote one more line that didn't sound like a lawyer. "You're doing the right thing. Don't be alone tonight." At 10:30, my phone buzzed again. Michael. I almost ignored it, then curiosity won. "You're tearing this family apart," he snapped. "You have no idea what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," I said. "You'll destroy Dad's company. Hundreds of jobs." Then he should have built it honestly. He was silent for a beat. Mom's crying. "She hasn't slept. Come home and stop this." "Not a chance." He sighed, voice low. "If this goes public, you'll regret it." I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, a photo came through. Mom at the kitchen table, head in her hands. The caption, "This is on you." David took my phone, set it face down. "Don't let him bait you." I nodded, but the image stuck like a splinter. By midnight, Nora confirmed everything was ready. Cloud backups, media list, timestamps. I triple-checked the attachments, then finally lay down on David's couch. I didn't sleep, not really, just drifted in and out of the same thought. This time, he couldn't silence me. At 5:30, I showered, pulled on jeans and a navy sweater, and tied my hair back. David made coffee, strong enough to wake the dead. "You're ready," he said quietly. At 6:50, I opened the draft email to the city clerk. The attachments were there. The complaint, affidavits, evidence, Mom's audio, the routing sheets. I copied 10 news outlets. The subject line was simple. Emergency filing and public interest matters. The clock on my screen blinked to 6:59. My hand hovered over send. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. "Claire?" It was Marissa. Her voice was shaking. "They moved the vote. Early. They're in a closed session right now. Someone's watching me outside City Hall." "Take a photo," I said. "I already did. I sent it to your lawyer. Don't be late." I ended the call, hit send, and watched the outbox clear. The chime felt louder than thunder. David grabbed the keys. "Let's go." Snow flurries whipped sideways as we pulled onto Colfax. Behind us, the SUV reappeared, keeping distance this time. My phone pinged. "Nora. Filing received. Hearing at 9:30. Council alerted." Ahead, the Capitol dome glowed dull gold against the gray sky. The city was waking up, unaware its foundations were cracking. David parked across from the courthouse. Nora stood on the steps holding a thick binder, her breath visible in the cold air. She waved once, sharp and certain. I stepped out of the car, the fireproof envelope tight under my arm. My phone buzzed again. Mom. I let it ring once, looking at the courthouse doors swinging open. Then I answered, "Mom, I'm here." Her voice trembled. "He's gone, Claire. Your father left the house an hour ago. He said he's going to fix it himself." Fix it how? She didn't know. I looked at Nora, at the courthouse, at the SUV inching closer to the curb. My pulse hammered in my ears. David touched my arm. "You've already started the storm. Now walk through it." I took a breath that tasted like metal and snow. "Let's go." We crossed the plaza together. The courthouse doors loomed ahead, the sound of traffic fading behind us. Inside, the day that would change everything had already begun. Nora led us through security and into a hallway that smelled like cold marble and old paper. She handed me the binder and said, "Keep your head up." David kept a half step behind me, like a quiet wall. The docket monitor blinked with names and case numbers. Our hearing was listed for 9:30 in courtroom 14. The words "temporary restraining order" looked both small and huge on that screen. We took seats in the second row. On the other side of the aisle, A trio of suits I did not recognize shuffled, folders, and whispered. One of them glanced at me with a flat smile that felt like a dare. Nora leaned toward me and murmured, "City counsel for the permit office. Maybe outside counsel for Bennett." I followed her gaze and saw the outside counsel confirm his presence to them. Clerk with a card that read, "Whitaker and Marsh." My phone buzzed with a message from Marissa at the same moment the clerk called for appearances. She wrote a closed session adjourned when your filing hit. People are rattled. Be careful in the hallway. I typed back thank you and slid the phone face down. The judge entered. Everyone stood. He had silver hair and the kind of steady presence that makes a noisy room settle without force. He took the bench, and the clerk began to call the morning calendar. When our case name echoed across the wood panels, a quiet spread through them, rose like ink in water. Nora rose and stated our appearances. The city lawyer did the same. The outside counsel for Bennett announced a special appearance and added that the company had significant interests at stake. The judge looked at him without blinking and said, "We will see what is properly before the court." Nora opened with the facts so clean and spare they sounded like a blade. She said a vote was scheduled to push through a promotion for the inspector, who had approved a contested permit. She said we had sworn statements, internal routing sheets, dinner logs coded as personal, and an audio recording in which a private developer directed reclassification of payments and a plan to discredit a whistleblower. She did not dramatize. She asked for a temporary restraining order halting any personnel action and freezing all permit activity tied to Highland until an evidentiary hearing could be held. The city lawyer stood and tried to sound calm. He said there was no immediate harm and that the vote had already been rescheduled. He said the audio lacked proper authentication and the routing sheets were misinterpreted. He said the public interest was best served by letting the agency function. Nora asked to play a segment of the recording. The judge nodded. The courtroom speakers carried my dad's voice into the still air. Reclassify the consultant as community outreach. If she talks, call her unstable. Make sure she is isolated. My hands were steady on my knees. I watched the judge, not the floor. The words landed with a dull weight. The outside counsel shifted and asked to be heard. He said the voice could not be tied to his client, and that the timing of filing was strategic and vindictive. He said his client had built housing and jobs for this city for 30 years and deserved the benefit of doubt. Nora replied with a single page, a copy of a calendar invite for a 5-course dinner 2 days after the permit. Approval. The host line showed the inspector's personal email and a partner from Bennett, Development. She spoke softly. She said we also had a contemporaneous text from a deputy in zoning calling. The dinner, a victory lap. The judge held the page for a long second. He asked Nora about the whistleblower's safety. He asked the city what protective measures were in place. He asked the outside counsel why a private developer needed to be heard on a personnel vote for a city inspector. The outside counsel began a sentence and let it die in his throat. The bailiff handed the judge a note. He read it and looked up. Counsel approach. The bench conference was quiet, but the body language was loud. The judge's shoulders were still. The city lawyer's pen was motionless. The outside counsel's jaw flickered. When they returned to their tables, the judge said the court would take a brief recess to review the affidavits and the full audio file. He asked that the parties remain available. The gavel tapped once, and the room exhaled. In the hallway, the air felt thinner. Reporters had appeared from nowhere. Microphones hovered at a respectful distance. I kept my eyes on a point just beyond them. David moved closer. Nora said, "Keep walking." The black SUV slid to the curb outside the glass doors like a thought that refused to go away. The back window lowered a little and then lifted again. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number read, "You do not want to do this." Another followed with a street photo of me and David on the courthouse steps, taken seconds earlier. Nora saw my face and said forward everything to me and then turned it off. I did both. Mom called again. I answered because something in my chest said, "Listen." She whispered that he was on his way to the courthouse and that he was angry, in the way that goes quiet around the edges. She said she had 2 more files and would send them as soon as she could find a place that felt safe. I told her to go to the main library and hand them to the reference desk with my name. She said all right and hung up. We sat on a bench by the window, looking down on the atrium. Nora reviewed her notes without moving her lips. Lila arrived breathless with a manila folder. She said Marissa sent this just now. Inside was a printed email that showed a draft statement from the city communications office. It praised public-private collaboration and highlighted Bennett as a pillar, partner on community projects. The timestamp was early morning the same day the vote had been set. Nora slid the page behind a tab labeled Narrative. The elevator bell chimed. The doors opened. My dad stepped out with the outside counsel at his side. He wore a dark coat and that careful expression he saves for rooms he plans to own. He saw me and his mouth curved in something that was not a smile. He walked past without stopping. The muscles in my back tightened and then let go. David said softly, "Keep your ground." A council member I recognized from the gala last spring hurried up the stairs. She touched my sleeve and said, "I read your filing and I saw your program last year. Do not back down." Then she moved on before I could answer. The ripple of it steadied me more than the coffee had. The bailiff called us back. We returned to the same seats. The judge was already on the bench with the binder open to a tab I did not recognize. He asked the city about its data retention policy. He asked whether external communications with sponsors are archived. He asked if any official had been placed on administrative leave pending review. The city lawyer said the agency takes integrity seriously and had initiated an internal assessment. The judge looked unimpressed. Nora asked to admit the new exhibit. The judge glanced at the page, then at the city. He admitted it. He asked Nora if the whistleblower had requested protection. She said yes, and that our motion included that request. He nodded once. The outside counsel rose again and said, "My client categorically denies pressuring any official." He said the recording could be manipulated. He said the dinner was coincidental and that his client's philanthropy should not be weaponized. He said the petitioner was seeking publicity. He started to say the word vendetta and caught himself halfway through. Nora said only this: the public interest is harmed when a vote rewards an official at the center of a live integrity complaint. A short pause. Then she added the word harm again and let the recording speak for itself. The judge closed the binder. Every sound in the room fell away at the same time. He looked at the clock, and then at our table, and then at the city. He said the court was prepared to rule. My heart ticked once, and then twice. The clerk stood ready with a form order. The outside counsel gripped the back of his chair. Nora kept her hands open on the table as if to receive whatever came. From the back row, a phone vibrated loudly and stopped. The judge lifted his eyes. The room went still enough to hear the faint hum of the vents. He began to speak and then paused, listening to something inside the silence, as if measuring the weight of it. He looked straight at me for a breath and then away, back to the law in front of him. The gavel rose from the block. The gavel struck once, sharp and final, cutting through the thick air. The judge's voice was calm, but the words hit like a wave. The court grants the motion. The vote is stayed. All permits and related actions are frozen pending investigation. The sound echoed off the marble walls, louder than applause, heavier than silence. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Nora gave a small nod. Nothing flashy, just quiet victory. David's hand brushed mine under the table, grounding me in the moment. Across the aisle, the city council scribbled notes with a shaky hand. The Bennett attorney's face was pale, his jaw locked tight. He didn't look at me. My dad did. He sat 2 rows back, shoulders stiff, eyes on the bench. When the judge adjourned, he stood slowly and turned toward me, his stare a mixture of disbelief and fury. For a long moment, neither of us moved. I thought about all the times I had stood in front of him, hoping for approval, waiting for a kind word that never came. Now the only thing between us was truth, carved clean and public. He finally broke the stare, said something to his lawyer, and walked out without a word. Reporters swarmed the hallway. Nora shielded me with her arm and whispered, "No statements, not yet." We slipped through a side door and out into the cold morning. The snow had thickened, soft flakes clinging to my coat, melting as they touched my skin. It was the first time in years that the cold felt like air instead of punishment. We reached David's car. My phone buzzed nonstop. Notifications, calls, messages. Lila sent a single text. "It's out. Every outlet has it." She added a link. I clicked and saw the headline stretch across the screen. "Court halts city vote after developer scandal exposed." Below it, a photo of me walking up the courthouse steps, head held high. David smiled faintly. "You just cracked open something they can't close again." We drove in silence for a while. The city passed by outside the window, gray and alive. Every traffic light felt like a small reprieve, a moment to catch my breath. My mom called as we hit the freeway. I hesitated, then answered. "Claire," she said softly. "I saw it on TV. The judge stopped it. I don't even know what to say." "Say you're safe," I said. "I am, for the first time in a long time." Her voice trembled. "Your dad came home, packed a bag, and left. No yelling, no threats, just silence. He looked small." I closed my eyes. "He'll blame me." "Maybe," she said, "but that's not your burden anymore." Her words stayed with me the whole way back. By the time we pulled into David's building, the snow had stopped. The sun fought through the clouds, turning the city gold for a moment, like something had shifted. Inside, my laptop was flooded with emails. Reporters, supporters, a few old classmates who had seen the story. But one message caught my eye. It was from an anonymous address with the subject line, "Thank you for saying no." The body just said, "You save more people than you know." I sat down at the table, feeling the exhaustion sink into my bones. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by the strange calm that comes after survival. David poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from me. "You did it," he said simply. "No," I said, smiling a little. "We did." He raised his cup. "To tell the truth. To freedom," I added. That night, Bright Steps released a statement. It wasn't long or defensive. It thanked the community for its support and promised to continue serving children with transparency and integrity. It didn't need to. By the next morning, my dad's company had suspended 3 executives. The city announced an independent audit. Marissa's statement was sealed for her protection. She'd been moved to a temporary office, and Lila told me she was safe. When I drove to Bright Steps later that week, the kids were outside building snow forts in the courtyard. Their laughter echoed off the brick walls, unbothered by the noise of the world. One of the girls, Maya, ran up to me and asked if I was famous now. I knelt and told her, "No, I'm just someone who stopped staying quiet." She giggled and said, "That's better than famous." Inside my office, I found a letter waiting on the desk. No name, just my first initial written in black ink. Inside, a check made out to Bright Steps for $50,000 and a note that read, "From someone who used to look the other way." I folded it carefully and smiled. Sometimes justice looked like fire, sometimes like quiet redemption. That evening, I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights come alive one by one. The storm had passed. The air smelled clean. My mom texted a photo of the kitchen at home, newly repainted, the walls brighter, the space her own again. She'd written, "It feels like breathing." I typed back, "It is." For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. Not approval, not apology, not permission. Just peace. People always say revenge is about winning. It's not. It's about reclaiming your voice when someone tries to bury it. It's about walking away from the fire with your dignity still intact. If you've ever been told you were too much or not enough for your own family, remember this. Silence can be power. Truth can be the loudest revenge. Tell me in the comments what integrity means to you and where you're listening from.